Welcome to another episode of Start the Week with Wisdom. I'm your host, Bridget Burns with the University Innovation Alliance.
And I am Sara Custer at Inside Higher Ed.
Each week, we bring you a short, uplifting interview with a leader in the field that we think you should be learning from. We think that there are voices that we need to definitely be elevating and amplifying, especially as we're thinking about the future. And boy, today is certainly one of those. Our hope is that this is inspiring and it's positive and gives you a sense of their leadership and their wisdom that will hopefully inspire you throughout the week. That's why we call it Start the Week with Wisdom.
And Weekly Wisdom is sponsored by Mainstay, the student engagement and retention platform proven to work through peer-reviewed research, like when it helps Georgia State reduce summer melt by 21%, or in another study when Mainstay helped GSU retain 1,200 students. Check out the research and learn more at mainstay.com.
And this show is also broadcast on the Innovating Together podcast, which is sponsored by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. And we are very grateful for their generous sponsorship.
And I am very excited to say that today's guest is Dr. Tomikia LeGrande, the president of Prairie View A&M University. Previously, she served as the vice president of strategic enrollment at enrollment management at VCU. Welcome, Tomikia.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How is everyone?
Good. I love the ring of the word, President LeGrande. This is so exciting. And for folks at home, I first met President LeGrande when she was formerly at VCU and was a critical part of leading their work that positioned them in the University Innovation Alliance. So I knew her back then. And since, for the last year and 3 months, she has been the president of Prairie View, which is an incredible institution with a long history. And I'm just so interested in what your thoughts are on the presidency now that you've been in there. And if you could just give us kind of a sense of where you are right now in terms of that role.
Absolutely. I will tell you the last 15 months have been super exciting. As I think about what I thought about the presidency before I came, it is everything I thought and more. Positive and not positive. I think if you want a seat where you're able to influence change and help think about innovation and the strategic direction of an institution, the presidency is definitely important. But I think what's more important is not what people assume, the power or the prestige of a presidency. I think it is the power in how you use your voice to get people to be on the same page, to be inspired and to let them share what they believe will work and to incorporate that into the work for the buy-in. So it has been a wonderful 15 months. We've developed our new strategic plan that we just launched a few weeks ago. We implemented our new PV Cares team model, which is this innovative student support model that we are really excited about, that all of our students will have a professional academic advisor, a financial counselor, and a career coach as a part of their care team. Every undergraduate student. So it's a good time at PV. I couldn't be more excited to be the president here.
That's awesome. I am not surprised that you hit the ground running and are moving incredibly fast, because that is definitely that's what I know about you. I am curious if we could turn the spotlight on. I love your endorsement of the presidency, that it's not terrible, that it is an opportunity. But I am curious about your leadership trajectory and like how you learned to be a leader in preparation for this, because none of us just like lightning bolt, I read a leadership book and now I'm ready to be president. So I want to start with the experience or the person who most informed your leadership style. And could you talk a little bit about that style so we can get to know kind of where it came from?
Yeah. So I think the person who probably influenced my leadership style the most is actually my mother. And I know, my mother does not have a college degree. She was a hairstylist, but she was a mother of 2 and a sister of 9 and married to my father for 40 plus years, who was blind and disabled. And what I learned from my mother was the skill of adaptability, right? To understand that you can be a leader no matter what your title is. And it's about how you connect to people and relate to them and realize that people will need something different from you depending upon the skill set they bring. So that for me, I learned that at an early age. I didn't know what to call it. And over the years, I have really gotten to the place where I describe my leadership as adaptable, right? So to be able to come from a place of where you can talk with staff or faculty or students from the 50,000 foot view that's visionary, but also to be able to get a little lower in the weeds to help connect the dots for people, because sometimes people may need that from you, is important. And then you'll have others who are high flyers and they don't need anything from you but vision, resources, and support. Let them go. And so I think the adaptability piece is important, but sometimes you have to realize you cannot be the same leader, manager, or supervisor for every person. I think the people who probably do it well now don't even think about their natural leadership abilities as being a parent or a caretaker or a family member. You are different people for those individuals every day. And so figure out how to bring that to your work life, to understand who you're dealing with, your stakeholder, and what it is that they need for you, and show up in that way.
Wow, that's such an inspiring, authentic, genuine response to that question, Tomikia. And it kind of echoes what you said at the beginning of the presidency isn't about power and prestige. And I think when you're saying adaptability, to me, that also speaks to service leadership as well, being a servant leader. And that's what I'm seeing reflected a lot in the way that you're talking about how you're approaching this role. I want to flip that around and see if there are any leadership examples that you've perhaps learned from in terms of not what to do.
Oh, I mean, haven't we all? We've experienced some situations where we're like, I never want to experience that again.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I've had my fair share of really positive leaders, but I've had some that had good qualities and strengths and just didn't make good choices. So I think when I think about the areas where I've had bad examples of leadership, they probably boil down to a couple of things. That the people that were expected to follow them didn't view them as competent, didn't view them as credible, didn't view them as really invested in the organization, right? So I think for me, watching those examples meant that I needed to make sure that any area in which I was going to lead, that I was really doing the due diligence to be competent in that area, right? So that the individuals I'm leading, they realized that I was a student of the craft, just like they are. And that I wanted to understand what their work and professional experiences were and applauded them for the things that they do well. Credible is important because I think oftentimes leaders, and we have all seen them, they get to the table and they want to talk about this one student or this one experience, right? And I'm a chemist by training. And so I oftentimes encourage people, that's great for sharing that one experience, that qualitative experience that gives color to a situation. But how many more are there like that? What does the data say? And I think when you focus on the credibility of developing a narrative around whatever the issues are in an organization, and then allow people to help frame that, that helps bring folks along, right? And so in instances where I've seen bad leaders, they didn't do that well. And it came in with whatever idea they wanted to push, whatever vision, it seemed siloed. People didn't connect it to the bigger picture or why we needed to change. So I have really taken great effort to make sure that in any situation, I'm competent, I'm credible, and I'm participatory in how I engage with people.
That's great. I'm like, I just feel like this whole interview is going to be just me being like, see, I told you. Oh, see, I told you, higher ed. Yes, we needed to learn from President LeGrande. I am curious about career arc, right? So I'm sure this is already happening where lots of people after you became president reach out to you and are like, hey, I secretly have that dream too. I just want to go back and understand, looking back at your career, what has been the most surprising element? Are you surprised where you are now? Or was this actually, I'm curious when that kernel of, hey, maybe I could do that pops in. But just, yeah, if you could just talk to us about that, because I think a lot of people assume that you have to be a certain type of person who's like, you know, you get your PhD, you're on a mission and you're very clear and this is what you're going to do. And then you're going to become, move up to become department chair and then dean and then da-da-da. And it's like, I just don't think that's realistic, but I am curious about whether or not that happened for you.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I decided that the presidency might be of interest to me early in my time when I was actually an undergraduate student. I wasn't set on it, but I'll tell you how it came about. I was at Savannah State as a student, walking around the track for exercise with my mother, and ran into the university president. I was a junior, and he asked me, "Young lady, what is it that you plan to do with your life?" And just in case it's not clear, I'm a little non-traditional. I was a little flippant. And so I said to him, "I don't know, who knows? Maybe one day I want your job." And his comment to me was, "Prepare well and come get it."
Ooh.
That was the first time it even occurred to me, really, that the presidency was a job that someone could prepare for and actually desire. So moving on through my career in higher education, I kept that in my mind. Did I really want to be a president? And I was advised very early on by a mentor that you should prepare for the ultimate job you think you may want. You can always get off that path. But if you wait too late, it'll be too late to get on it. And so I moved through my career thinking maybe I wanted to be a president one day. But I will tell you, I came through a very non-traditional route, right? So I got an EDD, and most folks are not scholarly practitioners. So I went the non-traditional route to the presidency. So I have earned an EDD. And there are many individuals across the nation who are presidents who did not go the scholarly practitioner route, right? They pursued the PhD. I also didn't come through the faculty ranks, right? So I didn't come through the faculty, department chair, provost position. And so it was not necessarily the traditional pathway to come through enrollment management, student affairs, and student success to the presidency. Well, one of the things, knowing that it wasn't the traditional route, and I had in the back of my mind that if I wanted to be a president, people would be looking for those experiences. My goal was to make sure that I was as well-rounded as a professional as possible. So I did teach, right? So I didn't get tenure through the ranks, but I made sure that I taught. I was a graduate faculty. I served on dissertation committees, all of those things. I published research. I think the other thing is that I would say that I often served on cross-institutional committees to learn as much about the university's operations. But the truth is, today, where we are in higher education, particularly in public higher education, there is probably no greater seat that prepares one for the presidency than enrollment management and student success, right? Because if you think about where the budget comes from for most institutions, enrollment is a feeder for that, right? So understanding the operations of the institution. Our value right now is in question in higher ed because of student success rates. And so having a central focus on the student success is an important part of the job, but also making sure that we know how to engage and support our faculty and staff in that effort. So I didn't always know whether I would really become a president, but I wanted to prepare for it. And there were many days where working with some great leaders and not so great leaders that I looked at the presidency and said, I don't think I want that job. I actually think I'll be a good number two. But over time, in supporting presidents as a cabinet member, what I realized is if I'm going to work this hard to support and move institutions forward, then I could do that as the leader of an institution that I really see greatness in, even beyond the great things that they've achieved. So that's how I moved through my career, from a graduate recruiter to a director of admissions to over enrollment management at different institution types, adding on student affairs and student success, and then ultimately being VP for strategy, enrollment management and student success. And then I applied for the job here at Prairie View, and it was a match made in heaven.
I love that, because so few people talk about this. And again, that's why there's like this mythology out there that there's a certain path and it's very narrow. And if you don't go this way, and by the way, that story, especially one about tenure, I know is actually very common and most presidents don't talk about it. And again, the problem is it makes it feel like it's too late, you can't. And the reality is we have incredibly talented people who we need to feel called to leadership, because the presidency is the most difficult job out there, in my opinion. And we need more people to even consider it. We need not to think that it's just this very narrow idea, because the kind of leaders we need are the ones who, like you said, have experienced some of the difficult decisions you have to make in enrollment management, student success, strategy, all of these things, and also been on the front lines. And so thank you for doing that, because it's so refreshing. Because again, I know all these stories, and I feel like the only way people find them out is that if they just have a ton of time on LinkedIn
Yeah.
or they know someone, and like it's kind of like a whisper, but it's actually incredibly common. And some of the best leaders in higher ed, some of the biggest names, actually have similar stories.
I think one of the keys to us getting more people interested in these jobs is what we show them are the hard parts. That's what makes front page news, right? When presidents, find themselves in opposition with faculty or students or staff, or just a decision doesn't go right, some PR nightmare. I don't know that we share enough about how to prepare for these seats and what those experiences look like. And to be honest, how you can bring your authentic self to this work. The students need to see that. The faculty and staff need to see it, because when people can see representatives that reflect backgrounds similar to theirs, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's discipline, all those different diverse characteristics, they begin to see themselves and realize that is a possibility for me.
I wonder, was that true for you, Tomikia? You mentioned a mentor, but I'm wondering, how did you feel confident that the path that you were taking, which is slightly different from that mythologized path to the presidency, how did you feel that was preparing you for this role?
Yeah, so what I was encouraged to do by that mentor, when I said I was going to take the path that I was on, I was going to follow my passion, and my passion was the students. My passion was helping institutions kind of aspire to greatness and achieve great things. Their comment to me was, that might be what you want to pursue, but the question is, if you want to be a president, what is the search committee going to be looking for? Right. And so what that made me do was to begin to study position descriptions for the president. So that became my audit. So each year, at the end of a year, I would think about my experiences and look at, some presidency position that seemed attractive, just to see how did I measure up and where were there gaps. And that audit really helped me in talking to my mentors. It helped me thinking about professional development. It helped me in thinking about what committees was I on campus. And more importantly, what other people would say about me on those committees on campus. What did I contribute? What assets did I bring? That was really probably the most important part. So regardless of what my trajectory was, that I had experiences that I could speak to, that a search committee would understand how my background and experiences, while I won't say unique, non-traditional, still made me a good candidate.
Wow.
That's great. I love this idea of treating it as, a field that you would examine and study and learn about, to be able to have your own kind of worldview on it, in order to set yourself up. I want to also suggest that by doing this, you are kind of zooming up and thinking about the role, thinking about the sector. And so I do want to give you a chance to give us your perspective on, given where we are in American higher education in this moment, I'm curious if you have thoughts about the changes needed at this particular moment in time, because you have spent that time at a different altitude, really kind of thinking about the sector, the roles, where we are.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest things right now that continues to plague me is this question about whether going to college is valuable. What is the value of a college education? And what that says to me as a sector is that we really need to rethink. And I think we've been talking about this for quite a while. But if we're honest, many institutions kind of tweak around the fringes of change. And I think what we are being pushed and challenged to do if we plan to survive our own individual institutions is that we have to make transformative change. We have to operate differently than we have in the past. That is, with the curriculum that we provide, the experiences we give, the work environment we create for our employees, and our focus on impacting the communities around us. And so one of the things is about how do we bring the students back to the center? I think oftentimes if we talk to institutions, they will say, oh, our students are our central focus. But are they really, right? Does it show up in every decision you make? Does it show up in how you're organized? Does it show up in how you dedicate your resources? Those are the things I think that really require transformative change. And it should be bigger than just trying to achieve a metric for prestige for U.S. News and World Report. Because to be honest, when any parent drops their kid off at your institution, they're looking for 100% graduation rate of their one. That's all they care about. right? And we should be striving for that as well. So I think about how we're organized as an institution, that it has to be around the needs of the student. So one of the things I've said at Prairie View, I tell folks, everybody is a part of student success. I don't care what you do. Your job is really about how to elevate the academic mission of this institution and help our students succeed. So, I mentioned earlier, our PV Cares team is an example. Our strategic plan is an example. But those kind of things, I think, as an institution, if you don't look back 10 years from now and see that you are a totally different institution, you've missed an opportunity.
This is great.
Yeah.
I feel like you're just dropping pearls.
So powerful. Pearls of wisdom, one might think.
Well, and I will say that, the only thing I will add is that you can be a totally different institution that has not deviated from your mission or the core group of students you serve. When I talk about transformation, I'm really thinking about elevation. That doesn't mean to begin to exclude folks that you have traditionally supported in meaningful ways.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful stuff. I wonder, you mentioned your mentor, and you've clearly had a very intentional path to the presidency. What's probably the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice I received is to become a student of the academy. I think oftentimes, especially if you're in a mid-level position, you find yourself questioning the things around you, especially if you're kind of isolated in a division like student affairs or you're in finance. I think it's important to become a student of the academy so that you can understand how the business of higher ed works, regardless of what anyone tells you. It is a business, right? And so you have to understand how it works and what the value system is, not just of the institution, but the people who fund it, right? So whether it's legislators, whether it's donors, you have to understand that. And the more that you can become a student of the academy, you can then bring your experiences to that to help people realize where there might be some gaps in knowledge, because sometimes the people who are in leadership don't necessarily know all the details, right? And so I think being a student of the academy helps you as an individual, not to just broaden your knowledge and expertise, but it makes you curious. And I think the most important thing about leadership is not knowing everything, but to be curious. If you are curious, you are seeking to learn. And if you are seeking to learn, you are seeking to make things better. And that's the foundation of what we need as leaders. The only other thing I would tell you as far as good advice for people that was given to me is to perfect learning how to lead from the middle. I think oftentimes as a middle manager, you're stuck between the people that you lead and the people above you who are making decisions. And people in their mind, they start thinking about, I can't wait until I'm a VP or a president so I can just decide. But I'm here to tell you, you will always be in the middle. It doesn't matter what position you hold. As a president, I'm between my university and my chancellor and my board and legislators and donors. You will always be in the middle. So it's important for you to figure out how to manage and lead from the middle with dignity. Right? How do you help bring the people along? Because as a leader, you're not just a leader of a union, right? You have to lead the people. You bring their interests forward, but you also have to lead them. But also you have to influence the folks above you, right? And how do you do that? That's a skill you got to perfect.
I 100% agree. I often will describe that the student success world feels like a foosball table, that the individuals who the president or provost thinks is responsible are actually just a knob in the middle of the foosball table. They actually, everyone else, and you're trying to get something down. And so it's really so much energy and time is spent trying to convince people at the same level of the direction you want to move in. And people who have this theoretical idea that leadership is just I just say it and it will happen. It's I bet they also believe in trickle down communications where they said it once and people all know it, so that's great advice. I do think that likely you are getting more reach outs now from people who dare to aspire to the presidency. And I just want to give you a chance of what advice do you find yourself most frequently giving to those people that you have not shared with us already?
I think the advice I probably most frequently give to people that I've not already shared is for them to really think about what leadership means. So in my opinion, I have two thoughts on this. One is that leadership is more about a disposition than it is a position, right? Leadership is a way of thinking. It is a state of being. It's a way of interacting. And then more importantly, leadership is not about your ability to get people to do things for whom you have direct authority over. That's not leadership. Leadership is when you're able to influence someone who owes you nothing. That's when you know you're leading, right? When you're able to persuade them or to convince them to buy into an idea because they see the benefit, even when they may be uncomfortable with change, right? That's leadership. And I think when you get to a place where you realize that leadership truly is not about power, then you'll invest in the people, you'll invest in yourself, as I mentioned before, about building your credibility and competence, and then figure out how do you bring groups of people together to solve hard problems. That's all leaders do. And when they run into a barrier, your job is to help get them unstuck. Because in the end, it is only going to be sustainable change if the people own it. Because if not, when you leave, the change will leave with you.
I don't know if you have a professional microphone sitting in front of you that you could just pick up and drop right now, but that feels like what one should do. That influencing someone who owes you nothing. I'm like, bam, that's a good one. That's a doozy. Boy, that's the hard one. Lastly, is there a book that you most frequently recommend other people read that is our audience often has developed a library of professional development resources they rely upon that are recommended by this show? So is there anyone that you're like, you got to read this one that you see often?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't have just one. And so what I will tell folks is books that have topics on change management, that have topics on authentic leadership, that have topics on how to use and visualize data in meaningful ways. Get away from this spreadsheet stuff. What's the story that data tells? Those are the three topics that I encourage people to really, really think about. And then in addition to that, I tell them, in addition to reading the book, because the book is really theory, then translate that to practice by getting you a mentor and a sponsor who's going to challenge you and be honest with you, even when it hurts, to help you push yourself to the next level. So I don't have one book. Those are the topics I give people, and really try to force people to think about how to move the words from beyond a page to go into a room and say, well, the book says I should do it this way. It's going to fall apart every time, because you have to understand the culture of a place in order to implement a strategy, right? Or else culture will eat strategy for lunch every day. And so that human interaction, that mentor and that sponsor can help you translate that information from the book into real practice, for you to have a safe space to try some new ideas.
Love it. Perfect. This has been lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, President LeGrande. I always knew you were awesome, and it was really lovely working with you in the UIA, but I feel like this is clearly the exact place that you belong. And we are so grateful for a chance to elevate and amplify what you've learned along the way.
Well, we appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. It's so good to be with you all today. And I really continue to support the work of the UIA because you all are centered on student success. And so, that's my first love in higher education. So looking forward to the great things you all continue to do.
Thank you.
Thank you so Sara much. Yeah. Thanks, Bridget, for having me again.
Always excellent co-hosting. We'll see you all next week.
All right.